freaking first cut. Golly.
Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Greg DuCharme, joined tonight by Sia Nejad, and we're breaking down the second round action from the Sentry Tournament of Champions. Sia, welcome in tonight.
Thanks for having me, everybody. I don't normally show up on the recap episodes. I got to say, this primetime golf thing, listen, I know it's not prime time in Hawaii, but I could really get used to this. Greg, is there a way for us to get maybe a little bit more primetime golf?
Well, what you can do, Sia, is DVR it during the season, and you can watch it whenever you want. But it is nice this time of year. If you're on the East Coast, like Sia and I are, it's a nice, relaxing evening watching golf. I mean, you turn it on at after dinner, right? And you get to relax and watch a little bit of golf all night, which is really fun.
Yeah, and it would be good for golf too. Listen, I understand the impracticality of all this, but I'm just saying, like, this time of year, well, golf is year round for the most part. Like, you've got the doldrums of like the NBA season, regular season that nobody really cares too much about, the Major League Baseball season that just kind of drags on until the playoffs. Like, golf could own that market, especially with the betting opportunities that golf presents, whether it's DFS or actual betting. It would be so nice to be able to engage in all of that during, non-football season.
Right. And when you get leaderboards like this, it really helps. We have quite a leaderboard tonight as we're taping right now. Colin Moriarty is in the lead at 16 under, has a really good look at 17 to go to 17 under. And of course, 18 is a reachable, even though it's 676 yards. It's way downhill and a very reachable par 5 to finish on. So he's going to have a good chance to extend his lead, but he is ahead of Scottie Scheffler, who's at 14 under, JJ Spawn, who's playing in the same group as Morikawa. He's also at 14 under. And then we have Jordan Spieth, Matt Fitzpatrick, John Rahm, Tom Kim. This is kind of shaping up to be exactly what we hoped for when the designs were made for these designated events.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of like cheat code here, right? Because we have some of the best players. I mean, I guess in these elevated events, designated events, we're going to have that too. We're going to have the best players in the world. But because there's only 39, or 38 at this point, there's and by the way, can I just say my bad on Xander? Like, clearly I caused an aggravation of that back injury. We can talk about that some other time, maybe on the Monday DFS show or maybe some other recap, Greg, but like, that's just so standard. But what I was going to say was, we have the best in the world here with some minor exceptions, obviously. So I'm not surprised the leaderboard is super crowded. I am a little bit surprised as Colin walks off with a par on 17. I'm a little surprised Colin's playing this well. And I'll tell you another thing. Scottie Scheffler, like, I think this thing is up for grabs between Colin Morikawa and Scottie Scheffler. And I understand Colin's in the lead. He's going to be the betting favorite as we talk right now and by the time this podcast ends. But I think Scottie wins this one. I think the putter just kind of is like a zero putter the rest of the way. His ball striking has been automatic.
Well, I'll give you something. Let's start with Colin Morikawa. We'll dive a little deeper into this. He started his round, made 4 birdies in his first 5 holes, which got him to 13 under. He's added 3 more on the second 9 so far. So he's at 16 under, a missed opportunity there at 17. But you still look at what he's done on the greens. And so far he's gained, over the course of 2 rounds, he's gained 3.6 strokes putting. Now, I was doing a little digging in his career, looking on rickrungood.com, of course. And every time in his career he's finished with 3 or more strokes gained putting, he's finished inside the top 7. 2 of them are wins. And all of his wins with measured strokes gained statistics, he's gained at least 2.6 strokes putting. So he has this tendency when he gets going with the putter, he really can get it going and he can keep it going. And my one concern for Scottie is Morikawa going to slow down on the greens? Of course, you see that miss there, and he has missed a couple of others. But do you think Morikawa can keep this up, or as the leader in strokes gained putting right now, are you worried that that's going to falter over the next couple of days?
Oh, no, I think it's definitely going to regress. It's just a matter of how far it regresses. And honestly, Greg, you would know better than I would. I mean, do you attribute a little of this? Is this just a pop, or is this new putting grip that is really kind of giving him some peace of mind on the greens?
Well, I think it's a combination of both, Sia. I mean, this is something that Morikawa has done throughout his whole career. And I think you can track some of the pops that he's had, which are pops, quite frankly. I mean, you look at what he did in his last 2 measured events. He lost 6 strokes putting in each of them in the last 2 measured strokes gain events. Just putting. He lost 6 strokes each. And now all of a sudden he's leading the way. But he's done this before in his career. He went to from blade to mallet, from mallet to blade, from a conventional grip to a claw, from a claw to a conventional grip. And so I am seeing Morikawa be one of these guys that changes and uses the change as a spark. It's almost like it's a new interest for him.
Yeah,
it elevates his interest, and all of a sudden we see a pop. So while it is a pop, what I've also seen with him is when he starts to feel it and he gets a little confidence and he gets himself in contention, it doesn't falter the way somebody who's never finished inside the top 128 on the PGA Tour in strokes gained putting. It doesn't falter the way you would expect a player like that to falter. So I'm very curious to see what happens. But there's obviously a lot of golf left. And if you're looking at the model, taking a guy who's leading the field in strokes gained putting through just 2 rounds, with just a 2-shot lead over somebody who's really hasn't found it with the putter yet, who's really struggling. Scottie Scheffler right now is 30th in a 39-player field. Well, now 38, thanks to you and Xander. You would take Scottie Scheffler. You would take the guy that's struggling, right?
Yeah, I mean, conventionally, that's what you would do. But to your point, I mean, Colin could potentially keep this up to some degree, but I don't know. Let's file this away for the DFS show for the Sentry Tournament of Champions in 2024, because is it team no putt? I mean, did you see what Luke List did on the greens today?
Yes.
Like, what is happening? What's actually happening?
And he came up on Monday, on our last Monday episode, and we kind of laughed it off in a way. No, again, a lot of golf left. But yeah. I find it very interesting. And of course, all these players are so talented. They're here for a reason. They either won on the PGA Tour or they earned their way to the Tour Championship and got themselves into this event. So they're all very capable. But there are definitely some like Luke List who you wouldn't expect. But see, I want to transition to Scottie now, who has a chance to become world number 1 again this week and is really hitting the ball as well as anybody in the field. In fact, better than anybody in the field. Mm-hmm. He leads in strokes gained tee to green, and but this is his first trip here, and it looks to be a really good golf course for Scottie Scheffler.
Yeah, I mean, he's just been kind of dominant. I mean, greens in regulation, tee to green, ball striking, however you want to look at it, he's really dominating. And again, the putter, and I'm not looking, I looked at his putting earlier today. I'm trying to compare round 2 to round 1, which maybe you can do that. But I mean, It's not, it's bad, but it's not awful. I feel like we could see some progression there. And again, if Colin Morikawa regresses even a little bit, I think there's only so many people that can compete here. I would probably put all the guys that are 10 under and above. I think they still have a legitimate shot at this tournament. But you have to pass so many people. One of those people is Scheffler, and I don't really see him backing down from a ball striking tee to green standpoint. So I could see him being in the lead at the end of round 3.
Yeah, I would not be surprised either. And you look at some of the things he did comparing round 1 to round 2. He lost 1.6 strokes putting in round 1. Now, he didn't make a putt outside of 6 feet. He made 65 feet of putts total. He had 31 putts on the day and shot 6 under par. I mean, that's incredible. That's an incredible number. And then you look at what he did today, and he gained 0.2 strokes putting, which was nice, but still only made 68 feet of putts. And here he is sitting at 14 under par. So he is in second right now in strokes gained approach the green. As I said, first in tee to green. And there's something about this venue to me. We talked about this on Monday as well, where you have a lot of these uneven lies. It asks for a little bit of imagination, a little creativity in the game. And it seems like just a perfect fit for Scottie.
I totally agree. And then, there's Spieth right below him where you would say, well, that describes Jordan Spieth as well. As far as, not to change the subject too much, but I mean, you're not like Colin Morikawa was plus 180 to win this tournament. Scottie Scheffler's plus 300. At least that's what I'm seeing. Like, it's not bettable, right, Greg?
No, I don't think so. Especially not Colin. If I'm interested in Colin and I didn't get anything pre-tournament, I'm going to wait and see what happens tomorrow. And if he gets off to a start tomorrow like Jon Rahm does today, where maybe you make a couple of bogeys in the first couple holes, and that number gets a little more favorable, I may shift my interest. I do have a really good feeling about Colin. I have a really good feeling about Scottie, but I think as far as the odds board is concerned, I think you got to look a little farther down the way.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I was actually, we've got some, I see a question in the chat from Joseph Bose, and I think I kind of alluded to this, but he says, how far behind is too far with this easy course? So to me, Greg, the easy course actually, you don't want to go too far back when the course is easy because there's not as many pitfalls with the leaders. But more importantly, with the Sentry Tournament of Champions, look at the leaderboard. It's one thing if you got a guy that's like Jon Rahm and he's 8 or 9 back and he only has to pass 1 or 2 superstars ahead of him among the 10 or 15 people he has to pass. Well, in this tournament, let's go to Tony Finau, for example. I think that's like the lowest I would consider going.
Yeah.
And he's around that 28-1, depending on where you're looking. And I think that's realistic at this turn. I think Tony Finau could get hot. He walks away with an 8 under day tomorrow, and all of a sudden he's in it with some faltering up top. But the long story short here is, look who he has to pass. I mean, Tom Kim, Jon Rahm, Matt Fitzpatrick, Jordan Spieth, Scottie Scheffler, Colin Morikawa. So what's the likelihood that he's going to have an amazing day and all those other guys are just going to be, subpar, so to speak? And that's the problem with taking a guy far down the board for this particular tournament. Talk to me in a few weeks, and we're going to have a lot of really good value plays that are, 8 back after day 1 and 80-1.
I do. At the same time, well, I agree with you. I also think of Xander Schauffele when he won here. He was 5 shots back of, or maybe it was 7 shots back. He was significantly back of Gary Woodland, shot 61 on the final day. And all of a sudden he ends up winning. Gary Woodland shoots 5 under with a somewhere between 5 and 7 shot lead entering the final day and loses. But the difference was Gary Woodland was running away with it. And you didn't have this number of players in there. And I know that when you hear Gary Woodland's name, you're not thinking of Colin Morikawa or Scottie Scheffler or Jordan Spieth or Matt Fitzpatrick or Jon Rahm. Or you're not thinking of that caliber player. But back then, he really was. He was the U.S. Open champion. And now, in this case, it's a little bit tighter. And while maybe a Morikawa or a Scheffler or any of those players I just mentioned has an off day tomorrow or Sunday, it's much more unlikely that all of them do. But I still think and Morikawa right now at through 17 holes is at 16 under. So 6 shots over 2 days on this golf course, I do think is manageable. Mm-hmm. I really do. And then you back off a little bit and let's say you rule out Morikawa, Scheffler, and Spawn, tall order. But those guys, if they shoot 5 under, you can make up 3 shots on them. Yeah. So I wouldn't rule out anybody in double digits or better. I think all those guys have a legitimate chance. I start to worry when you get into the 9 unders. That's kind of my line. So I think Tony Finau, I agree with you, is as low as you could go. And I also think that he has a really nice profile for a weekend comeback.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think Tony Finau, that number is sort of, changing as we're talking, but, it's going to be, because the round's about to end, it's going to be somewhere between 25 and 30-1 at most books. And it's not a play I'm super excited about, but it's a play that I think just from a value standpoint, I'm looking at everybody else, it's just, there's nothing super appetizing here. And again, it's because there's so many people to pass.
Right. But I will say, I think Tony Finau is appetizing to me. Yeah. It's a long shot, as long as you're going here is 30-1. But you look at what he's done so far this week, a guy coming in who's gained strokes putting in 6 or 7 straight events, all of a sudden is losing slightly. So he hasn't quite found it on the greens yet. And he's still in contention. He's hitting the ball very nicely. He's 9th right now in the field in strokes gained tee to green. So I think Tony certainly has the firepower to make up 6 shots, 7 shots to a weekend, even in a really strong field. So, Sia, before we get out of here and wrap up tonight's episode, I got to get your final pick. Who do you think takes this thing down?
Yeah, I said it at the outset. I do think it's Scottie Scheffler. I really think he's just playing so well. I expect Colin Morikawa to regress a little bit, not a lot necessarily, but it's so funny because we'll see what Morikawa does on this last hole, but Scheffler's going to be 2 or 3 shots back, and he's been a bad putter. And we know he's been a bad putter like for the last however many months it's been. But it's very easy to make the argument that Scottie is going to stay, sort of on top of Colin from a ball striking standpoint, but that he'll be a 0 putter and that Colin's just not going to putt this well over the last 2 days.
Yeah, it definitely seems like the model for consistency would point to Scottie Scheffler. And I've thought for a long time, real quick before we get out of here, I've thought that Scottie Scheffler, even in his struggles, has shown us that poor putting, he can still contend. And the question is he going to be able to get the putter together enough to win? And jumping that hurdle is a really big deal. But the thing is, and what I like putting the money on here is that it only takes 1 round. And if Scottie gets it going for just 1 round, it doesn't have to be both days over the weekend, given the position he's in. 1 round, and all of a sudden you could see him holding the trophy, see him as world number 1 again. So I think it's a really smart play here, Sia.
But you like Colin, I assume, to win.
I like Colin. Yeah, I think Morikawa it's hard. It's so hard to say, but I just have a feeling that he's going to keep it going with the putter. I don't expect a regression quite as much as you do. And I think Morikawa has missed plenty of opportunities on the greens too. I don't think this is lights out. It's just been good. And I think you might see a continued, you call this a spark. I think the spark continues. So, but hey, Sia, thanks for joining us tonight.
Had a great time. I'm happy to come back anytime. Maybe I'll see you guys tomorrow night as well. But either way, if I don't, the DFS show on Monday, everybody make sure you join because the Sony is going to be really fun to talk about. Yeah, it absolutely is. Looking like another really solid field there. More primetime golf coming at you next week, where we're in the groove now. It's 6 days a week here at the First Cut Podcast. And but before we get into all the Sony action, we will be back tomorrow night and of course Sunday night to wrap up the final round of the Sentry Tournament of Champions. But for Sia Nejad, you can find him on Twitter at Sia Nejad. I'm Greg DuCharme. I'm on Twitter at TheRealGFD. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you tomorrow.